Good evening. Today is October the 8th, 2024. This is our final scheduled town hall meeting for this year, and we appreciate you coming out. So our typical format is we'll talk about something that we think you need to know about. We'll give you a few updates on some projects, and then we open the microphone up for you to come and ask any questions you'd like to ask. When you do come up, we ask that you state your name and your address and then fire away. So our first thing is we're going to have a presentation from Marilyn Hall. She's going to talk to us about our inventory of service lines. Marilyn.
Thank you, Commissioner Daniel. I'm Marilyn Hall. I know I've already been introduced. But I also want to introduce myself as I'm also a resident of Oconee County. I've lived here most of my life. So if I say things like our water system, we do this, we do that, even though I'm a consultant that was hired by the county, I do live here. And especially when I talk about the schools and water quality, you'll know that my kids went through the school system here, and it's a very important topic to me as a person living here, in addition to what I do professionally. So we're going to be talking about the service line inventory. First, I'm going to start out with talking about the water system. This will be a pretty brief presentation, by the way, like 10 minutes, maybe a little bit more. Talk about water quality in Oconee County, the service line inventory, the service lines in the schools, and also I have Q&A up here, and I'll be sticking around till the end to the question and answer period to help answer any questions that might come up. So the first thing I want to talk about is the water quality in the drinking water quality in Oconee County. The county provides almost 3 million gallons of safe and dependable, reliable drinking water to about 33,000 customers throughout the county, or throughout the distribution system, excuse me. And that amounts to about 12,000 customers. And that means customer accounts. About most of the water comes from the Bear Creek Water Treatment Plant that is located up in Jackson County. I've heard and read about the plant is going to be undergoing some upgrades, and I want you guys to know that that doesn't have anything to do with lead or lead service lines or anything like that. It's actually an expansion of that plant. As you know, that plant is shared with Jackson County, Barrow County, and Athens-Clarke County shares the water source, but not necessarily the water treatment plant. Anyway, it's all growing like gangbusters, and so they have to upgrade the plant to make it bigger to accommodate future growth. All the drinking water in the county meets or exceeds drinking water standards. The standards are set by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and that is through the Georgia Environmental Protection Division. They regulate things like chemicals like chlorine, pollutants like nitrates and turbidity, metals like copper and lead, which is what I am here to talk to you about. The lead and copper rule is is mandated by the federal government. It falls under the Safe Drinking Water Act, which was acted in 1974. And the lead and copper rule was enacted in 1991. I'm not going to read it to you, but generally it regulates copper and lead in drinking water. And as you know, lead is very important to monitor because it can be toxic to children. So the rule requires that all lead service lines within a drinking water's distribution system, this is nationally, have to be replaced, okay? And the first step is to know where your lead service lines are. And I'm going to jump out right now and tell you that the results of the inventory are that there are no lead service lines in Oconee County. It's up there. I'm probably going to say that a few times so y'all hear it. Okay, so the first step was to develop a service line inventory. What is a service line, you might ask? Well, it's part of the water distribution system. As you know, there is a series of water mains in the right-of-ways throughout the service area. The service line is the pipe that runs from the main to the building. There are two parts to that. The first part is the pipe between the main, and the meter, which is owned and maintained and operated by the county, as well as the meter. The remainder of the service line from the meter to the building is owned and maintained by the customer. It's considered part of your household plumbing system. And so this is the first time ever the EPA has asked utilities to look at customer service lines because it's part of household plumbing, which is why it required a whole report and analysis and a consultant. So the service line inventory, which, as I said, is required by all public utilities, requires that all service lines, the material is classified, and this is both on the customer side and on the utility side. It has to be categorized as lead, non-lead, or galvanized requiring replacement. Now, typically service lines throughout the United States are made up of copper, plastic, or some sort of plastic, galvanized pipe, or lead. And again, in red, there are no lead pipes found in Oconee County. I put this up here just so you know what is typically found in service lines. There are copper pipes, plastic pipes, and galvanized service lines in Oconee County. The first thing we did was the preliminary service line inventory, and that entailed identifying buildings that were built before 1990. I don't know if you know this, but installing lead pipes became illegal in the state of Georgia and throughout the country in about 1987. So we looked at buildings built before 1990. We picked 1990 because, you know, plumbers have things in their inventories, and even though it might not be legal to install them, they have inventory. So 1990 is what we looked at, and then we also reviewed regulations and just to make sure the plumbing codes were consistent with the state. And then finally, we reviewed and analyzed all that data. And we went so far as to interview old-time plumbers that have been around a long time, as well as developers who install service lines. We looked at development specs and things like that to make sure that there was never any lead even proposed anywhere. And then we did a geospatial analysis. That final map there where it's red, those aren't lead pipes. Those are customer-owned service lines where we didn't know the material of the service line. You'll notice they're focused around the city of Watkinsville and the older neighborhoods along Mars Hill Road. That's because they're older neighborhoods. They're again, if anything was built before 1990, and especially before like 1970, they have a higher percentage likelihood of having a lead service line. But again, there were none in Oconee County. Just generally, that would be the higher places to look at. So we created a predictive model to help guide the field work. The EPA does not require that all unknowns be field checked, but this is really important. And field checked immediately. I think they give like a 3-year window to resolve the unknowns, to find out what the service line inventory is in detail. But fortunately for the ratepayers in Oconee County, the utility had already had under contract a company called Suburban Consulting Engineers, who's going to go out and visit every customer and look at every meter box anyway, because they were geocoding the whole system. So those engineers and those consultants went and verified the service line material on both the customer side and the utility side for the ones that were unknown. So the buildings that were older than 1990. Now there's still some unknowns. There's not a lot, it's a small percentage. And they are currently going around, why are there unknowns? Because they did try to do the whole system. They're unknowns because you got to get to the service line and the meter box, and sometimes there's fences with scary dogs. Sometimes cars are parked on top of things. Sometimes you just can't access them. So they're going to go back and revisit these properties to verify the service line materials. Right now, it's the highest priority for the utility. Well, second to providing clean, safe drinking water, but it's the second one behind that. And then they should have the complete service line inventory completed, no more unknowns within a couple months and certainly by the end of the year. So the results, I've said this probably 6 times already, but there were no lead service lines found in the system. And for that reason, there's no reason to believe that any of those unknowns that are still out there are lead. But we're confident there's no lead in the system. Now, let's talk about kids and daycares real quick. So kids are vulnerable, the most vulnerable to the effects of lead exposure. And the amount of time they spend in school makes it really important that we check the schools, double check the schools. So the utility is paying special attention to schools. The first thing that we did was identify where all the schools are. Seems like an easy job, and it kind of is, but also where the daycares are. So we got a list of all where the daycares are too. And we identified the service line material at all the schools and daycares. And after the inventory is complete, the utility will be going around and taking water samples from the schools and checking for lead. And stay tuned. We assume there's no lead because there were no lead service lines. Also, the utility has prepared and distributed education materials for kids and their families. So if you have kids in the school system, please look for information distributed by the county on lead. I'm just going to run through this real quick. These are the public primary and elementary schools. You'll see that there's no lead. We know exactly what the service lines are made out of. Same with the secondary schools, PVC, ductile iron, poly. And then service line materials, these are all the pre-K, public pre-Ks, and then also the private schools, no lead. And it says no lead for the pre-Ks because those are new buildings. There's no way those are made out of lead. But I just got a spreadsheet emailed to me that utility staff did actually go look at those and to confirm there was no lead. So there's no lead in the service lines at our schools. Finally, I don't know if people in this room followed the Flint water crisis closely, the lead crisis there. They might remember that it was a water treatment and maybe some source water issues that were causing the lead to leach into the water. I just want to let you guys know that the Bear Creek Water Treatment Plant has very strict erosion control techniques, and that would significantly reduce the potential for any lead to leach into the water, into your drinking water, and any lead would be from the solder in your household plumbing. So if you see your plumbing and you have copper pipes, there's a chance, especially if it's an older home, that there's lead solder. And if that's the case, that you see that in your home, you should call a plumber and see what your options are, or have your water tested. Oh, finally, Oconee County does go and do water tests. They have a list of houses that are particularly at risk to having lead solder. There'd be older homes and they're on a specific list, and they go and actually test the tap water there, and they consistently meet or exceed, like I think the EPA allows 15 parts per billion. Any water samples from Oconee County have been under 3 parts per billion. This is if my memory serves right. If you have questions about that, you can look at the county's water quality report. There's copies on the table, Sarah's desk at the front there. It's also online on the county website. Water quality is really good in the county. My kids drink it. I drink it. Okay. Finally, communications with customers. If there are any exceedances, the customer will be notified, not with a door hanger, not with, I don't know, something that doesn't work. You'll either get a phone call or a personal visit if there's a lead exceedance on a property. Also, any customers who may be on that list of unknowns, we don't know what your customer side service line is made out of. You'll get a letter in the mail mid-November at the latest. Additional notifications, you've probably seen them in the past, is if there's a water quality issue system-wide, those will be announced and you'll find out about that. And then finally, there's a website, an online portal. The QR code is up on the screen. There's also some paper at the front that has the QR code. It is oconeecounty.com/SL inventory. That's the website. On that website, you will find some frequently asked questions about service lines and lead in particular, as well as a link to the online portal. This is an online portal. It's not quite ready yet. You know how technology is. We thought we had it right, but it's probably gonna be another week before we have it perfected to where you can go and look and find your house and see what the utility has listed for your service line. It'll either be non-lead or it'll stay specifically poly or plastic or copper, something like that, depending on who you are. So again, that'll be a link off of that website from this portal. SL inventory, oconeecounty.com. So, thank you.
Thank you.
See some questions already. Are we saving them to the end?
Are you done with the presentation?
I am done with my presentation, sorry.
Commissioners have any questions on that? If you have any question on the iron, you're welcome to come up and present those to us. Or lead, I'm sorry. No, sir, come on up. We got people watching online. They like to hear what you're saying, so.
I have Stephen L. Shire, Oconee County. I have two questions. One, when was lead solder outlawed? Because we got a ton of copper.
Mhm. I don't have the exact date in front of me.
But what is it, in
1990s, I believe.
90-ish?
Yeah.
Something like that. And the second is, there are a lot of people now talking about fluoride like it's, the most poisonous thing on the planet. Do you have any comments about fluoride in terms of, how much is too much, too little, whatever? I'm not a dental hygienist, so don't worry.
Well, that's a good question. It's beyond the scope of my work in this project. I think the EPA allows 4 parts per million in drinking water. I think Oconee is less than 1 part per million. Other than that, I have to refer that question to Justin or Adam.
I'm Wanda Stick-Gotis. I live in the Canyon Creek subdivision off Morris Hill Road, and our water is provided by Piedmont Water. And so what assurances do we have that our facilities meet the same criteria that Oconee County does?
Piedmont is required to have a service line inventory as well. So you need to contact them to get a copy of that.
Okay. Would they just, as a good neighbor outreach, provide us with that information or not?
The EPA requires that utilities of a certain size publicize their information publicly. I think, but they have to make it available, so you can call them and get it. I can't remember the exact size of the utility.
But it's service line inventory is
Mhm.
what I would ask.
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Even late, and I'm not sure that you're the person I should ask. I'm Pam Hendricks. I'm understanding on my water meter that y'all have installed antennas or something. The last 3 months, my water bill has been $12.29. It's never been that low. And I came in the first month, I didn't know. I thought that's strange. The second month, I noticed it said 0 usage. Well, I'm living there. So I brought it up here and I showed them. So then I saw an Oconee truck out in front of my house, but I got a water bill yesterday. It's same thing, 0 usage. So
Yeah, that
they're
would be
not
outside.
working very well.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
Maryland's here specifically for the lead.
The little
if you-
silver thing on top of my green
Right. What we
water
can do,
meter.
Pam, we'll get somebody to come by there tomorrow and chat, and we'll give you a call and let you know what's going on.
Okay, because I don't
Thank you
know
for
if
letting
those
us know.
things are working very well. And
Oh,
and I'm
doesn't sound
wondering-
like it. We'll get you caught up, though.
Well, like, what do I really owe? I know, because I think they're going to read my meter and it's going to be 3 or 4 months usage. But anyway, okay.
Thank you. We'll
Has
take,
everybody got those new little antennas?
Not everybody.
I hadn't even noticed it until they told me.
I've got one at my house.
You got one? It's a
Mhm.
little round silver thing on top of the green thing, but it's not, mine's not working.
Thank you very much.
Anything else on service lines? I'm going to stick around if you come up with a question for later. Thank you.
All right, just a couple of announcements. We are taking applications currently for the Board of Health, Farmland Preservation. Both of those have 2 positions available. Library Board of Trustees has 5 positions available for that. A lot of activity on roads. We'll kind of give you a heads up on what's going on there. On the local front, the Hog Mountain Trail is underway now. They're doing the soil erosion measures to keep things straight. We expect that to be done in the third quarter of 2025. Roundabouts at Lane Creek and Snows Mill Road, as well as Union Church and New High Shoals Road, both of the engineering is completed. We have right-of-way secured for Lane Creek at Snows Mill and currently in negotiations for Union Church at New High Shoals Road for right-of-way. We hope to take those 2 bid the first part of November. So you should see some construction starting in the spring of 2025 on those 2 roundabouts. Our goal is to let both of those at the same time, hoping we get some economies of scale with that. Some of the joint projects that we have with GDOT, Clotfelter Road Bridge. If you live near there, you've seen some orange barrels go out. That means you have 72 hours before the bridge closes. Just kidding. No. What they're doing right now is they're going to start doing some grubbing and clearing to allow for utilities to relocate. We're expecting in the spring of 2025 is when the closure will happen, and we will be providing you notice. They'll have signs up, and we'll be broadcasting that out as well. Experiment Station Road widening. We're expecting another lane shift in November, and the third quarter of 2025 is what I'm telling everybody it'll be done. If it gets done before then, it'll be great, but don't expect it. So we also have a joint project with GDOT on a roundabout at Snows Mill Road and Rocky Branch Road. They opened bids on that last week or 2 weeks ago. It appears the apparent low bidder will be E.R. Snell. And so once that's awarded, they'll give them a notice to proceed. So you should see some activity starting sometime in early 2025 with that construction. We have a similar project at Malcolm Bridge Road at Ray's Church Road for a roundabout. We hope to have right-of-way authorization at the end of this year, so we can start getting the right-of-way to start that going. Right now, construction is showing in 2026. We're hoping we can get that schedule moved up. It just depends on how long it takes to negotiate the right-of-way there. There's some state projects going on as well. The Highway 186 bridge right now is in final design, and they are trying to secure the right-of-way needed. The let date for construction is scheduled in March 15th of 2025. 441 widening from the county line to Bishop. Right-of-way and final design are underway as well, and construction let is scheduled for August of 2027. So if you travel up on the other side of Madison, you'll see that road is moving along very well. Then they'll move on this side of Madison to complete to the county line. So hopefully they just keep rolling with that. Highway 15 bypass with Watkinsville. As we mentioned here before, we were awarded some money from the governor and the state legislature. Engineering is scheduled. They are taking bids. I don't know if that's been awarded yet to start engineering on that. And right away, money has been awarded as well, and that's not scheduled to start till 2026. So that it's a very long-term project, but at least we're getting some activity on it. A few things with Parks and Rec. We are currently in engineering for The tennis courts at OVP. So they kind of got a layout, trying to see how many we can fit in and then get a schedule on how to get those going. We're also working on engineering at Heritage Park. We have some improvements going on there as well. And then Dawson Park, have met with the consultants on that last week. And so they're starting their schematics on where everything's going to go. We have the master plan, but that may have to shift around as they do more research with how things need to work out in the park. That's all I got to say. We're going to open the microphone up for anything you want to talk about.
My name is Travis Stevens. I live at 1576 Horseshoe Bend Lane, and I am my concern is around the new Dawson Park basketball specifically areas. I coach in the feeder league in North Oconee, and I have 5 kids, so we use almost everything the county has in terms of rec sports and everything. But we currently don't have a facility where we can practice in Oconee County. We're having to find churches or anything else outside of the county. That's where we're having to go to right now. Even our home games are played outside of the county. We can't use the school gyms or any of that. I'm just a little bit concerned about 4 basketball courts being enough space for not just the rec sports, but you're talking about probably, I don't know, 300 kids in the feeder league between Oconee County and North Oconee County. And I don't know if there's any concern, if there's any changes that y'all are looking at, or hopefully not reducing the number of size courts, because I saw 4 was the number, but I do think there's an opportunity for more courts to be used. You know, they charge them for these tournaments and these games that we go to every year or every week, but you know, I think Oconee County is missing out on an opportunity there, and I don't want to short sell us for the future, especially when I got kids that are going to be coming up through that. So.
I don't think we're short selling anything. So it's going to be a phased approach. We hope to get 8 courts there at that location, but it's about timing and money, right?
Right. Yeah.
So we're trying to be a phased approach. Our number one goal is to take care of rec programs, and then secondarily would be that
Right.
additional usage. So.
When you say phase though, how, like, is that years down the road, or is that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just the amount of money it's going to take here on this first phase is
Yeah.
significant. We're still paying for OVPs right now.
Okay.
That debt's not retired till 2033. That's
I just
big
think
money.
The spending would increase drastically coming in and doing it in phases though, right? Instead of just doing it all at once.
Well, I've heard, I don't necessarily know that. Nobody knows what the future is going to be. It's sort of like when I built my house, we wanted granite countertops when we built it, but we couldn't afford it, right? It would have been cheaper back in 1994, but we just didn't have the money.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks.
guys.
Robin Stevens, 1311 Skipstone Drive. I'm here tonight on behalf of the tennis community in the organization of Clark Oconee Tennis Association. And Chairman Daniels, you mentioned OVP, and that's actually the reason I'm here tonight. First of all, to thank this commission for the way that you've done your long-range planning for 2 very popular sports in terms of tennis and pickleball, that you've done parallel planning, giving those 2 sports dedicated facilities. And I think that's greatly appreciated by both sports and a wise way to move forward. Secondly, I appreciate your commitment to tennis at OVP. Again, you mentioned how long the money, it's all about money and funding and the like. I just looked at a master plan from 2004 that we've been working on OVP, and tennis courts were part of that. Have 8, which is great, but we've had to persevere throughout several years to keep them on the plan, and I'm happy that you approved the 16 additional courts at OVP. And if things go well, we'll be looking at maybe moving some ground in 2025. And those courts can't come, anytime too soon. Let me just share a couple of data points with you in terms of the growth. Tennis has really grown the last 2 or 3 years. CODA primarily runs, the largest program it does is adult league play. Last fall, we registered 870, we had 870 registrations. This fall, over 1,200. Similarly, when we look at a complete year statewide, CODA, the organization I represent in our local league, came in second only to Atlanta in its participation over the last 12 months. We had only 229 fewer registrations in Atlanta. And when you contrast the population differences of those two communities, our growth is very substantial. So we're very, very excited about the courts coming online, hopefully next year in 2025. But I have two questions for you tonight. As we talk about funding and the like, the plans are in place. Funding that was set aside for SPLOS. We all know about inflation and the rising prices. So if indeed, when we start building and we fall short funding to get those 16 courts, what's Plan B? And then secondly, and similarly to that, is what I referenced earlier, that you've been very committed to doing parallel planning between the two sports, with OVP eventually being the Center for Tennis and Herman C. being the Center for Pickleball. If we fall short of those 16 courts, let's just say we only are able to build 10 or 12, will your commitment be to not convert any more courts at Herman C. until all 16 courts are built at OVP, regardless of the timeline?
We haven't gotten that far yet. Once we figure out the financial portion of that, that'll be something the board will address and make those decisions at that time.
Converting courts earlier than the completion of 16 courts at Herman C.
16, where's that number coming from? You talking about 16 total with the addition?
Right, but if we
Okay.
fall short, I mean, we had always talked about, or at least I've understood us to say, that once OVP is complete, then we'll talk about converting the 4 courts at Herman C. to pickleball. So my question is, if we fall short in this 2025, would there be any interest or inclination to go ahead and convert those Herman C. courts early?
I'm not sure. I'm confused on your numbers.
Okay,
I'm trying to, how many tennis courts right now at Herman C?
just 4.
Just 4.
Mhm.
So those 4, and then the master plan only had another 4?
Well, if they're converted to pickleball, you'll get 8 out of those.
But the master plan, I'll have to go back and look. Let's try to get on the
Okay,
offline and kind of go back through that.
all right, fair enough.
I
Thank you.
I just can't remember off the top of my head the
That's
numbers.
quite okay. I thank you for your
Okay,
time.
thank you.
Don't all look so glum as I come to the podium. You probably know what I'm here to talk about. It's the thing that, I'm most passionate about. Victoria Cruz, I live in Oconee County. I'm a registered voter in Oconee County and nowhere else in the United States that I know of. So what I want to talk to you about is something that happened yesterday, and I'm sure you're going to hear about it somewhere. I'm sure our illustrious videographer will be putting out his video of what happened as well as his interpretation of the proceedings. I just wanted to get out in front of that to put some background to it so you know what the real story is. Okay, so my husband and I spoke with you, John, earlier this year about issues we had with possible invalid voter registrations here in the county. And indeed, since 2006, Oconee County has been nationally advertised by Judicial Watch. I don't know if any of you know what Judicial Watch is. It's an attorney, mostly a litigation group out of Washington, D.C., that looks around at the country for political things that require intervention judicially, usually on the side of conservative issues. And one of their big things is voter registration. Okay, so Oconee County has been on the top list, in the top 10 in Georgia, and Georgia has been in the top 10 of states in the country, and Oconee, one of the top 10 counties in Georgia, which show consistently more than 100%, often up to 110, 12% of voting age population registered to vote. That's not possible. I know you all use voting age, or not, you all use census data for projections. Census is only every 10 years, but I know you use it when you're developing your projections for the development of the county and the needs of the county. Well, those same predictions are used when looking at who is registered to vote. So it is a nationwide problem. It is estimated by most of the studies that have been done that there are tens of millions of excess voter registrations or duplicates or invalids or just nonsensical voter registrations in our voter rolls. And accurate voter rolls are the bedrock of honest elections, fair and honest elections. Every invalid registration that is voted, in other words, one that doesn't belong, say, to an Oconee County resident, that cancels out the vote of a validly registered Oconee County resident. Oconee County now has about 34,000 registered voters. It does creep up because our population is creeping up. But in line with that creeps up the number of what they call inactive. And these are only ones they've identified as inactive registrations. In other words, they've had no contact with driver services, no contact with the election department, and they haven't voted for a certain amount of time. There are laws in Georgia that say after 5 years or 2 federal elections, if there's been no voter contact, that voter is supposed to be notified. The Secretary of State is supposed to be doing it. The Secretary of State is not doing it. Our county officials are assuming that the Secretary of State is doing it. Maybe the Secretary of State is assuming that Eric, who we have hired, it's an independent, private, they say they're nonprofit, but everybody pays, the state pays to belong to that. There are about 23 states in it now, and they're supposed to share their data, and they're supposed to inform us when there's over-registration. That's not being done. Otherwise, we wouldn't have so many inactive. There are probably about almost 8 million registered in Georgia. Over 1 million of those are invalid or inactive. In other words, you don't know. Why does a registration become inactive? Why does nobody interact with either DDS or the election system or vote? Well, the most obvious is they're dead. Okay, and when I looked at the voter rolls this year, a voter roll from March, indeed, I quickly found approximately 10 dead people. From 2014, 2015, it's not like they died yesterday, last year, last month. These are deceased people who are still on the voter rolls. Okay, of course, deceased people don't vote. That's why we have, tables that show how many dead people voted in elections during the year. Somehow it's happening. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I deal in data. So a million, even though Raffensperger says our voter rolls are the cleanest. Anyway, there is a method. There's a law, like I said, that after 2 federal elections or a total of 5 years, Secretary of State is supposed to notify them. If they get no answer back, then they're put on inactive. They'll be active up to that time. They'll put on inactive, and then they'll stay there for another 2 federal elections, and then they're taken off the rolls. And they're also notified that they're taken off the rolls. So they have like 5 to 10 years to find out that they're inactive, or, to be proven inactive or not here anymore. But it's not being done. We have people on our voter rolls who have been there inactive for up to 30 years. Why is nobody paying attention to that? But there is a mechanism for citizens to do that. Georgia passed 2 laws which allow citizens to get involved in looking at the voter rolls, which are public record. Everything about voting is public record. I can order a voter roll from the Secretary of State. I can do it for the whole state. I can do it just for the county. I can order the voter history. Not that I'm interested in that. I'm really not. I just want to see who has not been active for a while and who may have moved. Because that's another thing. If they have been inactive, they probably move. Up to 50 million people in the country move every year. You know, between 5 and 8 million die every year. This stuff happens and we should be looking for it. So there are 2 laws that allow citizens to look at that. And the way this is handled conforms with federal law, which doesn't allow you to take off citizens without cause, without probable cause. And the first one is called a 229 challenge. This may come up in Lee Becker's article. 229 challenge is you investigate this person and you realize that they are either dead, they have moved out of the state permanently. You get that from the USPS. They have sold their home here, bought a house in another state, and sometimes when they get over there, they apply for a homestead exemption. I'm pretty sure as county administrators, you don't don't take lightly if people have multiple homestead exemptions. Your homestead exemption is supposed to be where you live. So that's another element of proof that they live there. And also, they have registered to vote in another state, because in a lot of states now, registration is automatic when you get a driver's license, and you have to get a new driver's license when you go to a new state. You surrender the old one, you get a new one. The DDS should communicate with everyone else and say, hey, your guy came over here, wanted a new driver's license because he moved here. We gave him one. We took his old one. You need to make note of it in your system. So there are ways to check this. It's just not being done. So there are ways to prove. So 229, people who have probable cause under 229, who really shouldn't be on our voter rolls anymore, should be removed from our voter rolls. And all the citizen has to do is provide the proof to the county board, because they apparently don't have the time or the staff to do it themselves. But this, I consider it a service to the county to look at these issues. Property records, tax records, voter records, they're all public record. And these are submitted to the Board of Elections, and they are supposed to look at them. They're supposed to call a hearing within 10 days, consider the evidence that was submitted, and then vote on whether to remove them from the rolls. That was not being done. That also has to be done outside of 90 days before an election. You cannot remove anybody from the voter rolls 90 days. My husband and I submitted challenges in June and July, well before the August 7th 90-day cutoff. I just want to make that clear, because some people are thinking that we are trying to remove people from the voter rolls against federal law. That is not the case. The board did not know how to handle those challenges, so they made up a procedure that did not follow the law, at which point I got Mr. Haygood involved, and I also notified you, Mr. Daniel, that this process was not going as it should. And unfortunately, someone decided that it was necessary to ask for legal intervention. I was willing to work with the county and try to educate them about their responsibilities. And that did happen, but not in time to have anybody removed from the voter rolls except for 2 people who never should have been on the voter rolls in the first place. One registered at a post office, and one registered at a UPS store. Those are invalid registrations on their face. Your registration has to be from at the residence where you live. where you lay your head on a pillow where you reside. And so those two were taken off with great fanfare, but they should never have been on the rolls in the first place. The second option for, I mean, we know that people should not be on the rolls merely because they're not being taken off. We know they've moved. We know they've bought houses. They're voting in other states. So those, within the next 45 days, you are allowed to challenge them by what's called 22-2-230. You challenge their eligibility to vote in the coming election. Okay, and that is what we did. We then submitted a few, the board had already gotten their procedure together after Daniel Haga got involved. And we followed the procedure, gave them all the data they needed, made it as easy as possible because I know they're very busy in an election year. But they did approve most of these because the probable cause just to challenge someone to vote in the election is quite clear-cut. We're just saying, it looks as if you moved, it looks as if you're registered and voting someplace else, and therefore, we're going to put a little challenge on your registration so that when you come to vote or send in a ballot, all you have to do is submit a little bit of extra information. You either say, yes, or, you know, well, you wouldn't be voting here if you moved. That's a felony. Having two registrations happens. People don't cancel their registrations. Voting in two separate jurisdictions is a felony. And that shouldn't happen to anybody. And I'll tell you who it might be happening to are college kids. College kids are encouraged to register to vote where they're going to college. They are almost coerced into registering to vote where they go to college. And yet they may be registered to vote automatically where they grew up, just because they went to get a driver's license. This is not a good situation for the kids. They're not in a you know, a good frame of mind to know that they can cancel the other registration. They may not know that it's even possible. I mean, it just sets us up for a problem for them. I don't want anybody caught up in felonies. So anyway, the challenge part is easy to get over. They have set a hearing for October 24th where anybody who is challenged is allowed to come to this meeting and say, no, I live here, no, I don't live here. And people, they're never completely disadvantaged. Re-registering to vote is not a big deal. And plus, nobody's being taken off the rolls in these last 45 days. It's against the law to do it within 90 days, but I can challenge up to 45 days before the election. And the last challenge was on the 46th day before the election. Nobody's trying to remove anybody. Yesterday, Ryan Germany from, you know, the ex-Secretary of State Council came and took Haygood's place at the court to prosecute this, or to defend the county, I guess. It doesn't sound like he was defending the county, though. And there were representatives from the Southern Poverty Law Center, the ACLU, and Common Cause, accusing us of trying to take voters off the rolls within the 90 days. Totally untrue. Believing that 230 challenges are being heard within the 45 days of, or being filed within the 45 days before an election, totally untrue. It's just the way the board decided to treat this. The board is supposed to immediately address 45 or 230 challenges. They decided to do it at the next regular meeting. And now they're having a special called meeting in case anybody wants to show up and say, hey, I'm sorry, I'm here, whatever. I just want to get that out there. Our voter rolls need to be cleaned. You know, if we were to ever be in another situation where mail-in ballots were sent out to every address on the voter roll, from Oconee County, we would have an extra over 2,000 mail ballots sent out to people who don't live there, who do not live at that address anymore. What happens to those? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. That's the situation we're trying to avoid. We're also trying to whittle it down so there's not that much postage expense. You won't have a lot of postage expense if you just get rid of the dead weight on the voter rolls. And I understand they're understaffed, and we're just trying to help with the work that they have to do. It's never nice to hear that you're not doing your job, and that's basically what that lawsuit yesterday was about, to ask them, require them to do their job, to clean the rolls, and if they can't clean the rolls on their own, to hear the challenges in the legal fashion they were meant to be heard. You know, and I can give you all copies of the law. Maybe you guys are much better at looking at the laws than our election officials and our Board of Elections are, and you might be able to figure out what the proper procedure is. I do believe we're on the right track. I hope there's not a setback, but there was no chance yesterday for my husband or I, the actual challengers, to get up and say what we had done. Instead, we had to hear the hyperbole and the disinformation that was being handed out by the attorney and the non-governmental organizations that flew in from around the country to Oconee County to be on record for this. I thought it was rather, it was overkill. But anyway, that's the story. If you
Thank
want me to take it under oath at some point, I will do it. I didn't get my chance in the courtroom, but that's what's happening. And I hope that Mr. Becker can review this tape and also get the facts straight. Thanks so
Thank you.
much.
Part two. My name is Stephen Elsher. I'm still a Oconee County resident. I'm grateful that my wife, Victoria, went first because she's much more thorough, she's much more attentive to certain details than I can be. Even though that we live in the same household, we wrote up separate little things for this evening or how to talk about this. First, I want to show in very brief, and I know it would be ideal if it was a PowerPoint, but it's not. This is an example of one of, let's just say, almost 100, but not quite, of these challenges. So they come with a cover letter. Sorry, folks in the back. They come with a cover letter citing how we did it, the method, citing the legal basis for this, and so forth, and then how we gathered the data. The data is gathered from governmental sources. It's not from hearsay, and it's not from non-governmental sources that happen to be aggregators, although you can use those to point you toward governmental sources. We realize that governmental sources are the sine qua non to establish registration accuracy. So some of that is recorded in a tabular form so that the election people can pretty quickly scan. It has, for example, the voter registration number for Oconee County. And if the person has moved to North Carolina, it's got the voter registration number for North Carolina or Florida or Texas or wherever it is that we looked at. Some of these are harder to get than others, but that's what our job is. Then we also attached, because this was explicitly requested, screenshots, meaning computer monitor screenshots of what we actually saw to guide us to the registration. This, for example, is a Florida registration site giving the date of the registration, the number of the registration, and a few other pertinent things. Now and then we present that, we send an email, although all these are individualized, they're all in color because they're in PDF format. So it's pretty, I would say, self-explanatory once you know the overall thing. There's an overall cover letter that says, "Dear Ms. Sharon Gregg," or whoever, this is again a submission of voter registrations that we would like you to evaluate. Victoria said something that I want to just clarify a teeny bit. We do use voter rolls. We do not have access to how people individually voted. We don't know if you voted for Thomas Jefferson or George Washington. We don't know. And we don't know if you're a Democrat or Republican typically, although sometimes that does get inadvertently revealed, but it's of no importance to us. What we're here to do is typically to find under 230 challenges, is this a deceased person? That's easy, except you have to find, according to this local requirement here at this Oconee County Registrar's Office, they want to actually see the obituary. Taking a picture of a gravestone that says Margie died in 2011, that's not good enough. They want to see the actual obituary. Fine, we'll work on it. We present that as well in this presentation that goes as a PDF. Okay. Under Georgia, I'm just going to read a little bit now. Under Georgia election, oh, Vicki told me to smile more. I'm sorry. I don't mean to not smile. I'm not trying to be like, Mr. Hardbutt up here. I'll avoid the bad word. It's just that, I'm pretty intense about this. Under Georgia election law, voter registration challenges are allowed under, as she said, OCG 21-2-229 and 230. These are to allow electors, meaning voters, in the county of residence, Oconee County, to assist the local election board in maintaining accurate voter registrations. Currently, as she said, Oconee County is over-registered 110 to 112%, depending on the source, of all adult eligible voters. So when you take a census, you got the little kids, you got a few other people who live in a trailer, they may be transient, but those people get counted sometimes. So that's why we emphasize adult eligible voters. Registrations that are able to be challenged include deceased, those who've moved out of state and re-registered into another county or another state, or who are inactive through 2 federal election cycles, as Vicki described. Registration challenges are impartial, in our opinion. We definitely are not looking for some evil group that we want to really put it to. We do not know party affiliations or voter ballot history. Only if they have voted and when they voted, we know when they registered as well. We compare these facts to the voter rolls for Oconee County as provided by the Georgia Secretary of State Office. So we're not making this up. This is not third-hand information. This is not hearsay. Voter registration challenges do not disenfranchise voters. This is to look at voters who are living comfortably on a beach in Sarasota, Florida. They're voting in Sarasota, Florida, and they just happen to still be hanging on here. They moved down there a couple years ago and they forgot all about Oconee County. Maybe they come back for a dog game. If they come back and sign, some sort of petition, then they get reactivated here of all things, but they're not voting here. So that's part of the voter registration challenge cleanup that we are attempting to do. Notice I keep emphasizing the word registration. We're not looking for individual voters because we don't like their last name or something. The purpose of voter registration maintenance is to assure that our Oconee County voters are themselves not disenfranchised by voter dilution. And by that means, if you have a person who votes twice, for example, before the state election board a couple of cycles ago, 2 or 3 months ago, there was literally a man who was voting from Nevada. He had moved out there to Las Vegas because he was a gambling guy. And he was voting with absentee ballots over here all the time. They finally, somebody called him on it and said, hey, you can't do that. And he's like, what about it? They haven't caught me. So by voter dilution from out of town, out of state, out of jurisdiction voters, there could be double votes, unrequested absentee ballots, or other maneuvers. Despite what both sides of the political aisle might wish to believe, remote electronic access to polling place hardware to manipulate data has been extensively documented by cybersecurity experts. I'm saying the quiet part out loud that no one wants to talk about. It is possible, and it's been proven to occur also in Oconee County. You may not want to hear that, but it does occur. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Commissioners, good evening. Chuck Williams. I live on Old Watson Springs Road in the south end of the county. Couple of things. Number one, I wanted to give a shout out to your staff and the volunteers at Oconee Animal Control. Living in a very rural part of the county, probably one of the most rural remaining parts of Oconee County, we deal with a lot of issues. It seems like every end of semester at UGA, we end up with dogs and cats that show up, and it took us a few years, Mark, to figure out what was going on, and then we figured out that those students that are headed back home at the end of semester down Highway 15 to wherever they're going, anywhere between here and St. Simon's Island, mom and dad have told them you cannot bring that dog or that cat home. So they get down to the Iron Horse community where we live and see a rural dirt road, and they think, oh, it'll be taken care of here, because we invariably, believe it or not, truthfully, pick up new strays that show up at the end of semester. But it's not just that. We've dealt with rabid animals, wild animals, raccoons, skunks. Had what we thought was a rabid fox just a couple of weeks ago that we trapped at our farm. And animal control usually, if we have to dispatch those animals, then they usually pick them up and send them to the wildlife lab for testing. And like the young fox, it was just acting strange. We described its behavior to the director of animal control, and after hearing us out, she said, I think it's just a young half-grown fox. You should be fine to turn it back out and let it go on its way, which we did. So again, I hadn't always agreed with everything animal control has done. They have a tough, thankless job for the most part, but I think they do a real good job, and I just want the public to go on record and say that. The other thing, shifting gears totally, and let me just say up front, I'm not trying to create any dissension between governing bodies in our county or create any sound bites or whatnot, but it seems like with the growth and development that the city of Watkinsville is seeing and some proposed growth and development, it seems like at least parts of this community are about to blow their lids. And I can understand some of that. Watkinsville obviously has got a traffic problem. You all drive through it. I drive through it. We know Watkinsville's got a traffic problem. And what I'm really asking, again, not looking for any sound bites, but obviously the sewer capacity thing, I guess, is sort of a finite resource, and the city has what they have to work with. But Chairman Daniel, the other things that growth in Oconee County impact, whether it's in Watkinsville or whether it's out in the county, public safety and water and all of the resources that have to be provided by the county, whether residents are living within the city limits of Watkinsville or not. I guess what my question is, other than the mayor and the council members of Watkinsville being county residents and having the opportunity to meet with you and talk with you as individuals and avail themselves of these type meetings, is there any communication beyond that you as a county commissioner are able to share with Watkinsville's governing body that helps them understand better than just the average citizen what things that are happening in Watkinsville, how they impact the county? And that's really what my question is, and it may be somewhat rhetorical, but you know, I'm seeing on social media now, there's almost it seems like people that live out in the county that are frustrated with, you know, traffic and whatnot in Watkinsville. It's almost becoming an us and them thing, if you believe, and I believe just a portion of what I read on social media, but I think there's some element of truth in some of it. So again, Mr. Chair, my question is there a mechanism that helps the governing body of Watkinsville weigh out the decisions it makes as far as the implications beyond just the corporate limits of Watkinsville, and those being the things, again, public safety, water, whatever that you have to deal with? Thank you.
I guess that is, the best thing is for the voters to have those conversations directly with that group. We do communicate. I talked with the city councilman just this afternoon on similar type, he had questions about infrastructure and some of the stuff going on. So there is communication between this group and city of Watkinsville. Really, it's the citizens that have the most power in those conversations, though. So I just encourage everybody to communicate with them as much as you can. And, That's the only answer I got.
Going back to the library issue, there was a lot of communication between commission and the city councils. I know for a fact, John and I met with them numerous times about how that was being handled. You can take it for whatever it's worth. But the library chose to go to Wire Park. So, but I will just tell you, I disagreed with how the city handled it. You know? It's over, water over the dam now.
Mr. Chairman, it might be helpful for some of the audience, listening to the audience, maybe to get a little background information on just how this came about the sewer capacity and how Watkinsville, I mean, this is agreement that went back decades, I recall. Is that correct as far as the allocation?
So that there's particular agreement they're talking about is one we passed probably in 2017. So the sewer plant was really originally operated by the city of Watkinsville, and they were having trouble with operations, so they turned that over to Oconee County to operate. At which time in that agreement, it talked about having capacity available for city residents. As time went on, we got on the short side on residential sewer capacity and locked it down. So there was no residential sewer capacity available. The city was wanting to have some growth plans that they were very well publicized and appeared to be supported by the city at large when that was going on. As we were, the city still owns the property, did own the property where the sewer plant was sitting. And we're getting ready to expand our sewer treatment plant, doubling it. So they transferred that property to us, and one of the concessions there was they would get 100,000 gallons of sewer capacity to do with as they wanted to within the existing boundaries of the city of Watkinsville. So that would prevent any annexation in order to expand high density. When the plan is completed with the 3 million upgrade, they will get another 100,000 gallons of sewer capacity, and then that's it. I don't think you'll see any further expansion to the new location for a very long time. We're going from 1.5 million to 3 million. We're doubling what's available right now. So is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think that's what gets lost, in the current conversation is just the background on, it's the issue about their choice to use their sewer capacity for housing. Whereas in the unincorporated area, this body made a decision not to allow sewer capacity for residential. So that's why you don't see the high-rise apartments out down Highway 15, down near Peggy down there. There's no high rises down there, right, Peggy? So I think that it's good for the benefit of the people to understand the background behind that the sewer is really what's driving all this. If Watkinsville did not have that sewer capacity, all this would not be a conversation that we'd be having. So, I think that Mr. Chairman's right. I know that the city of Watkinsville has changed in our lifetimes that we've been here, Mark. It's certainly, we're behind the 8 ball as far as the traffic with Highway 15. I'm glad the governor stepped up to move the additional funding for the planning of that. That planning process in itself will be probably tedious, I would assume, because it's going to have to go through somebody's property. It's somewhere down below Watkinsville. So if you own property down below Watkinsville, you're gonna be, your antennas are gonna go up when they start talking about where they're gonna put this, I guess you call it a truck route. I don't think it's gonna be a 4-lane. It's just mainly, you think it'd be just a 2-lane truck route.
That's all that's been discussed, but when they get into the engineering and
Yeah.
funding, you know.
So it's not gonna be like a I-85 going through your property there, Peggy. So, but I think it's just good for people to understand the background behind, why that development's taking place inside the city limits and not in the county, because the choice that your governing body's made. So Chuck, I think that, for your short time that you were on the city council, you understand how that works. So call your city council member and, make your case. Thank you.
Make it quick. I'm Jimmy Blos. I probably should have spoke earlier. I would like to piggyback on Robin Stevens, but I live at 1221 Jacob Drive in Watkinsville, and I'm really excited about the tennis courts that are coming at OVP, and I'm just for years have heard about the courts that are coming. I'm a father of 5 as well. It's tough to, I like to play. I'm a coach. I teach. We're busy, and when I get a chance to go out and play, I want to have the opportunity to play. And there's many times where I can't go and do the things that I'm passionate about. And I got to have an outlet, guys. So I guess what I'm asking is what exactly is the process for this? I'm new to the town hall stuff, but I've been hearing about it for years. And a lot of people come and ask me, hey, Coach, what's going on at OVP? I've been hearing about these courts for years. When is it going to get started? And every year I feel like I'm saying, okay, it's coming next year. It's coming next year. And I don't really know. I've just heard about it. So can you fill me in on that, exactly how it works? It sounds like it's coming 2025. You're getting bids. But
So
fill me in on
the
rest.
park master plan was done, I believe, in 2004. That was when OVP was first dreamt up. So the commission at that time put in the infrastructure they could put in. And that debt is still being serviced and won't be paid off till 2033. But what we got is still not paid for. We had, part of that master plan was additional fields and additional tennis courts at OVP. There was SPOS money set aside for the fields and the tennis courts back in the 2009 maybe, or 15 SPOS. At that time, in talking with Parks and Rec, the highest priority at that time was to get additional fields. That's the problem we continually falling behind on. We put in 3 fields, and then by the time that was done, the amount of funds that were available were not available. That rolled it over into our current SPOS. And so that is our top priority, is completing tennis courts at OVP in this cycle. That's why they're top of the list. So we were hoping to get them done in the previous SPOS, ran out of money. So far, that's the top project to do. So as soon as the engineering's done, we'll start getting pricing out and see how far we can go.
Okay, so when do we find that out?
Hopefully first of the year. Engineering's going on. Like I said, we'd love to put it out to bid in 2025. Love to see the dirt move. We want it just as bad as you do.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Time, so, I'm safe. One more thing I wanted to bring up. We just saw a horrific hurricane go up through the south, well, up to Tennessee, the western part of North Carolina, and it also hit Valdosta. And the damage is devastating. Maybe the biggest and most expensive hurricane that we've had. I think it dwarfs Katrina. And we have another one that's getting ready to impact Florida, Category 5. Now, these hurricanes, we fled Florida for Georgia because of hurricanes. We just didn't, we lived there for 10 years and just, you know, Andrew came through and that was it. We were done. We were done. But it looks like you can't really predict where the hurricane is going to go right now. And I just sort of wonder, do you consider the possibility in your planning that we could have a devastating natural disaster like that and what that would look like? This is hurricane season, you know, if there ever was an October surprise before an election, this is it. This weather is it. And I just wondered if you could maybe go over plans or be thinking about, because this is going to go through November. If you can be, you know, tell us how you might
Yeah,
handle
so
something
we
as
have a
devastating.
emergency management specialist on staff. So that's his job, is help us be prepared when something does happen. So they're communicating all the time with state. He's actually deployed right now in other parts of the state to go help. That's how it works.
Okay,
If you're not impacted, you send help where you can. After each storm, they get together and debrief, okay, what things went good, what things were bad, and so we're continually updating our plans. One of the things we're starting to work on now is just a cleanup after a disaster like this. So we're working on, we're gonna try to go to contract somebody to come in. If that storm had a hit over here and done what it had in Augusta, we wanna have somebody lined up that we can call and say, get over here. They'll come in and start helping us do the cleanup. So we're continuously looking at that with the sheriff's office, our state resources as
Okay.
well.
that's good.
Somebody's job is.
Because, you know,
that.
there, but for the grace of God, really, I mean, I don't know how they predict anymore, and I think the way to predict where these things go is getting so crazy, how they turn corners and head up places they never went before, so, just want to be sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we sure appreciate everybody coming out and, taking time to listen to us, and we appreciate your participation. We'll be producing a schedule for them next year and keep your eyes open for that. Look forward to seeing you then. Have a great evening.